Hey, this is Audunsson here, and in this video I want to share with you why you must have a genuine strategic advantage to build a very successful physical products brand on Amazon. And I'm going to show you how to do this. This is especially important if you want to have a highly profitable business. You can succeed without the strategic advantage, but if you want to have excellent profit margins and make this business a lot more successful for you, then what I'm about to share with you in this video is absolutely key. To start with, I want to mention that I'll be the first one to agree with you that Amazon is in many ways a lot more saturated than before. When I got started in 2012, it was like a walk in the park. Even just doing private labeling was a massive strategic advantage in and of itself because almost no one else was doing it at that time on Amazon. Most third-party sellers were just wholesaling other people's brands, and they did not focus on the marketing side of things. They did not control their own listings on Amazon, and that whole game was brand new. It was kind of like being alone in a desert, and you were the only one that was really alive in there, so it was pretty easy. But keep in mind that it was only easy for those that were this one step ahead of everyone else and had the insights and knowledge to actually do private labeling, because most sellers simply didn't have a clue about it or that it was even possible. And keep in mind that there wasn't really anyone teaching us how to do this properly either, so we had to learn and figure things out on our own, and that's not easy. Today, for a lot of products, when you're private labeling, it's like you're inside a dense jungle. There are so many other sellers selling the exact same thing that you are, and it may seem like it's really hard to find a good opportunity and win because of all the other sellers and because of all the competition that's out there. But this does not mean we can't be just as successful, if not more successful, than say 5 years ago. Things have definitely changed, but in many ways it has also changed for the better. For example, there's way more volume on Amazon today than when I got started 7 years ago. Way more. And a lot of things have become much easier and more accessible as well. And this trend will continue. The key is to adapt to it. The hardest truth for anyone in business, in my opinion, is the reality of competition. So it's important we address this point here right away. What is the reality of competition? Like, what do I mean by that? Well, the reality of competition is that it never ends. It just keeps coming at you, and it never ever lets up. In fact, it tends to become more and more intense, especially with things that work and have potentially huge rewards, such as selling on Amazon. Now, this is an uncomfortable fact for many people, and people, struggle to embrace this because they don't want to deal with that, and they don't want to fight for things. So what do? How do you actually win and defeat your competition? Because it is there, and for anything good, it's going to be there. If it's not there from day one, it's going to get there really quickly if the thing you're doing is any good. So trying to avoid competition is not the answer. You have to learn to actually defeat your competition and win. Well, what you have to do is you must have a genuine competitive advantage. No hack or tool or shortcut will let you escape that fact. You must have a way to get ahead and stay ahead of the competition. The good news is, when you do this right, you can actually break away from the competition and create a gap that becomes very hard to catch up with. Just think about the largest brands in the world, such as Coca-Cola. This happens all the time in tens of thousands of niches, and it can happen for your brand too. So now let's talk about how you can actually gain a competitive advantage when selling your own branded products on Amazon. The first thing I want to mention is that it all starts with you, okay? You have to learn to be relentless, and you have to never let go. One thing I can tell you for sure is that the most obvious thing that separates the big winners from the rest is their ability to focus, believe, and keep on improving every single day. In other words, it's really your mindset that turns you into a perpetual winner or a loser in anything you do. I realize mindset is like such an overused term, so its meaning, it tends to get diluted. But to me, it's first and foremost about your competitive nature, meaning do you give up in the face of competition, or do you fight to figure things out and win? In other words, do you fight to stay ahead of the competition or not? Improvement isn't easy or comfortable, which is why most people stop at a certain point. But you must never stop improving if you want to defeat the competition. And on that note, the second thing that is really important to understand here is that you must be at least one step ahead of the pack. And the only way to do that is to constantly improve. When you feel like things are oversaturated, so to speak, it's really another way of saying you don't know how to play this game and win. Just imagine you're playing basketball or something and you just keep on losing the ball. Your shots keep getting blocked and you feel like you can't get anywhere in the game. But I guarantee that there's going to be another player on that field that's just crushing it. Why? Well, he's better at this game than you are. That's why. What I can promise you is this. If you're going to copy what everyone else is doing and act like a monkey see, monkey do type of entrepreneur, you're always going to feel like things are saturated because you won't have any advantage over the competition. It's as simple as that. You're just going to be one of many copycats, basically. So again, you've got to be a step ahead of the pack. And this is precisely why I've always made it a huge priority of mine in business to constantly learn and innovate. And anytime I do that, it gives me an edge for a certain period of time and I'm more successful. Then others start talking about it and they catch up. And I realized a long time ago I won't ever be able to prevent that from happening. So instead of trying to prevent it from happening, I'm better off just continuing to improve and innovate all the freaking time and to never stop. Because you can never stop if you want to stay in front and win. Now with that out of the way, you should have the context in place to understand what I'm about to share with you. In this video, I want to share with you one specific strategy I use to gain a competitive advantage when selling physical products on Amazon. And this is a major one, possibly the biggest one of all, and it is product strategy. Let me explain what I mean. So the problem with private labeling, well, is that everyone sells the same products. That's sort of the concept of it, right? Essentially, people are copy-pasting products onto Amazon from suppliers that they usually find on a site like Alibaba and offer that product they want to sell. And as you know, there's dozens, sometimes hundreds of suppliers that offer the exact same product. So of course, when we have dozens, if not hundreds of people buying this product and selling it, even if they're putting their own name or brand on the product, it's still essentially the same thing. And now this obviously does create saturation. For sure it does. But the problem is that most sellers do not understand or know how to overcome this. So they just keep on doing it. And most sellers believe the solution is something like using a tool such as Jungle Scout to find a hot and untapped opportunity. And while I certainly agree it's very important to find a great product opportunity, this is not the solution, because what happens is that what's now unsaturated today will become saturated very soon, like tomorrow, especially if it's popping up inside a popular product research tool like Jungle Scout. That means thousands of other sellers just like you are also going to see it. Now, some other sellers believe the solution is to do more marketing or find a new hack, give away more products, get more reviews, learn the best product launch strategy, and so forth. But these things are not the solution either. You're still going to be fighting in a very saturated marketplace with no actual advantage. It essentially means that the seller with the deepest pockets wins, or that no one really wins or makes a lot of money with this product. So, what is the solution? How can you win? Well, the solution is simply to make the competition irrelevant. The truth is that 99% of sellers are, again, competing head-on with near identical products, benefits, angles, target buyers, and so forth. And I refer to this all combined as product strategy. Well, the truth is you're always going to be fighting a bloody battle if you do that. Again, no marketing gimmick or hack of any kind can get you out of that hard, bloody battle for long. The only way to escape the competition, or I should rather say, get ahead of the competition, is to be different. And of course, I don't mean be different just for the sake of being different. I mean, be different in a way that's actually better. You've got to have a product that stands out and is different. And you've got to give people a genuine reason to buy from you instead of somebody else. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how can I do that? You know, that's easier said than done. And that's a great question because nobody really knows how to do this. And it took me a long time to figure this one out. And I've spent 7 years on this and countless hours studying the world's best brands and learning from some of the smartest entrepreneurs on the planet. What's really good news for you is that this is much easier to do than you think. For us private labelers, this is becoming easier by the day as technology evolves and there are more options to get things done in general. So there are a ton of things you can do with little added costs or effort on your part to stand out. The key to becoming different is inside your mind. The problem I found is that it's hard to think of anything without the right mental framework. So you've got to learn the right questions to ask and how to look at things in a different perspective to be able to perceive the opportunities and see the things that others can't see. Now let me give you some specific examples. Most people look at what others are doing and just aim to do more of the same, but just a little bit better, right? And this works to a certain extent, but eventually it becomes hard to gain any advantage this way when everyone else is also doing it. So instead, you want to look at what others are not doing. You want to ask yourself questions like, what are the biases with this product? And the cool thing is that the more competitive something is, the more heavily biased it tends to be towards sellers competing on the same exact factors, like really hard. And it's because, you know, they see the competition do certain things and then they flock to it and they all try to do that same stuff just better. So it becomes extremely biased into one direction. So when you can come up with something different, you can stand out like a polar bear in an empty desert. What is everyone focused on and what would the opposite of that look like? Think about that. That's powerful to consider. A very simple thing I like to look at is, what is the emotional bias with this product? Is everyone focused on the facts and details of the product itself? Which, by the way, is very common when it comes to physical products. The focus tends to be about who has the best features and product details and things like that. Or is everyone focused on the emotional benefits of the product? Because some people don't really care about the details as much as they care simply about the emotional benefits of it. Usually it's one way or another and everyone is heavily biased towards one side of it. And if you do the polar opposite, that alone can give you a good differentiation and a genuine competitive advantage. You see, it can be very simple things like that make a huge difference if you just know how to look at things and what questions to ask yourself. But again, the problem is that most sellers try to be different with like better images and copy, for example. But this is not true differentiation. This is just marketing. And the same goes for adding in an ebook as a bonus that no one really cares about or needs. This again is not real strategic differentiation. But having a unique type of packaging, for example, that is a very simple type of actual differentiation if it's actually making your product better or different in a value-added way. But ultimately, what's really important to understand, because there are so many different things you can do to differentiate, is that you're not looking to just add features and more stuff. It's not about just adding things. That is not a good strategy. Instead, what you want to do is figure out exactly what people care about the most for this particular product and then amplify that. Give them more of that. Make that thing better with some sort of differentiation. And then eliminate or minimize the rest so you don't put effort, time, and money into it. You know, the ultimate strategic advantage is when you have a product that's more appealing than alternatives, and it's also simpler or less expensive for you to provide it. Then you're both adding more value and a cheaper cost into the equation. And when you can do that, it's hard not to beat the competition. And by the way, in the next video I'm actually going to share with you how you can be more efficient and procure your products at a lower cost than the competition. So keep an eye out for that, because that's a really important element here as well. Now, another thing that's great to look at is what are people currently liking or disliking about the product? The good news is that when you're selling on Amazon, this is so easy to do, because if you analyze the reviews that you get and that the competition is getting, you'll see what the most common complaints and praises for the product are. And the crazy thing is that despite buyers, complaining about a certain element of a product over and over again, and you can see it if you just look at the reviews, most sellers will still just copy paste the same exact product once again into the marketplace and face the same exact complaints for their product. Like, there's no added value or improvement when you do that. And that's not the way to win. You should always analyze this part of it before launching a new product, because this is one of your best opportunities to actually differentiate in a meaningful way and actually be better, have a better product. And in fact, to help you with this, I'm going to give you a templated spreadsheet for the framework that I use to analyze how products can be improved by looking at the reviews. And you can download this for free via a link that's below this video, and I hope you actually apply this, because it can open your eyes to a game-changing move for your products. And by the way, you can also apply this to existing products, and it will give you a good idea of how it can be improved and what you can do to gain a competitive advantage. Even just yesterday, someone asked me, like, how do I relaunch and refresh a product that used to sell well, but it's, starting to slow down and it's not doing as well anymore? Well, this is exactly how you do it. Apply this and find ways to actually upgrade the product and improve it. And then I doubt you'll struggle to get sales, if it's a meaningful improvement. And then actually we're going to talk about the best way to evolve a product over time here in just a couple of minutes. But before I do that, I want to actually show you how this framework that I'm sharing with you works in action. So let's jump on over to my computer screen, and I'll walk you through it so you can go ahead and apply this for yourself and for your own business right away. All right, so here we are inside the product pain points framework that I use to uncover all the major, basically, complaints, or in other words, pain points of any given product, which then enables me to see in what way I can actually create a superior product, a product that's actually genuinely better than what's already out there. So to start with, you want to look at feedback. And this can be feedback that you collect as you're selling a product. So feedback you receive through support tickets and things like that. But it's also really useful, and this is one of the great things about selling on Amazon, is to actually look at the reviews. That is feedback. And if you're starting a new product from scratch, you can just go straight to the reviews, because you don't have any history selling the product, so you haven't received any feedback yourself. So what I mean here is you want to basically go and just read through a bunch of reviews. Or if you're selling a product, you want your support team to be collecting this feedback all the time as you're getting it, right? So you build basically a database of the major complaints. But if you just go to Amazon and you look at the reviews, I've just got an example here. Just click on any product and go look at the reviews and you'll see what I mean. But basically, when you come into the reviews, you can just go and you can look at both the good and the bad, but mostly we're looking for the bad here. So we want to look at the negative reviews. And basically what we're just trying to see here is, what are people saying? Like, what are the complaints? And you want to do this for a lot of different products, right? So you want to select, let's say, the top 10 best-selling products that you're going to be competing with, and look at the reviews on those products. And I recommend the top 10, again, best-selling products. And you can go straight into the negatives. You don't have to look at all the 5-star reviews, because most of them are not going to give you actually like helpful feedback. This is kind of ironic. In this case, the bad reviews are more useful and better for us. So, for example, when we come in here, you can just read this. Like, this review is really, really useful because it is in depth, and this guy's actually like really reviewing the product and talking about it. He's really tried it out, and he's talking about the actual things that made him give the product a 1-star. And if you look at some of these things, you can actually see he's even talking about the technology. So it's unusual that someone goes this far. But for example here, quality of soldering, incredibly poor. So here's specific feedback on what he thinks is bad, right? And here's another one. Failed lantern was in the contact switch. So contact switch issue, it gets depressed when the lantern is closed. The top part of the lantern slides up and down smoothly, and when there comes a amount of friction, that's cool, right? However, that's accomplished by having O-rings pinched between 2 rails. So this guy is really going in depth, right? So it gives us very specific feedback. But the key here is not just to listen to any one review, right? So you want to notice what they're saying. So in this example, I've just put in complaints about buckle quality. That's a different product, right? But as an example, let's say we're looking at something like that. Or I can just switch it to make it more clear. So let's say quality of soldering. I'll just switch to that. So he's complaining about that, right? So we've seen that come up once. So I put in a 1 here. So you want to count the number of times you encounter the issue. So as you read through reviews, you want to write down every single complaint that you see mentioned, and you want to just add another count as you go through it. So if we go down, and let's say we were looking at, let's say these are all positive. As we go to this one, this one's talking about the lantern light shine. But let's say we saw a complaint about the solder ring, and now we found that twice, right? So now it's 2, and we just go through this entire thing, and depending on the product, you're going to see a lot of different complaints. Usually there's at least like 7-8 complaints that you see over and over and over again. Sometimes a lot more, sometimes there's fewer, depends on how complex the product is and things like that. But now, once you've done this, we can really get a good idea of what is going on, right? And the more feedback you collect, the more accurate this picture is going to get, because you're really going to see what is coming up over and over again, and also how often, because we are really looking to figure out what are the main complaints, like what comes up over and over and over again. And then once we've done that, you want to go in and actually, sort of collate this feedback and make it more useful. So what you do is you're going to want to come and review the results, and you want to count, like, what is the number 1 complaint? What comes up the most often? And at this point, you might combine certain things together. So you might see quality of soldering. What was the other thing we saw? Low lantern light shine. So low lantern light shine might be another thing, right? And you're going to have a bunch of these things. Let's say we saw this come up like 67 times, and this came up like 35 times, and etc. We might have a bunch of different things, and maybe the complaint down here has the highest number of votes, so to speak, right? So we want to organize this, and let's say the number 1 complaint is the quality of soldering. Now, that could actually have come up in different ways, right? So some guy might talk about it like this, someone else might talk about it in a different way, but you want to figure out like what are the actual complaints about. And so maybe, let's say complaint 1 and 12 and 25 are basically about the same thing. So you want to combine it here, count that and make it as one complaint so it's clearer for you. And you basically do this and see how many you come up, you can dig out of this really, like what are the main complaints, and usually you can boil it down into 10 or less, and you want to rank them in order of how often they come up. Now, once you've done this, now you can really start to see like where are the products failing, like what is coming up, what are people not liking about the product. And you got a really strong, clear idea of this by doing just these 2 parts up here. And then based on this, now you want to really start thinking about this, right? And you want to really figure out what, based on these complaints, what can we improve? Like what should we improve? And you're not deciding here, you're just analyzing. Like this is just a framework to help you think about this problem or product, right? And come up with an actual product that is better, right? And I'll talk about the different levels to do this here in just a moment. So don't worry, it doesn't have to be something like really intense. It can just be simple improvements as well. But let's say improve, obviously quality of soldering. That would be quite straightforward, right? And then low lantern light shine. Well, we probably want to have like high lantern light shine. So these are just ideas at the moment, but it's going to be pretty straightforward based on this feedback, what needs to be improved. And you want to rank this again in order of what you think is most important. And then it is not just about adding and improving things. Obviously that is very important, but removal is also extremely important, because what we're really after here is a strategic advantage, which I talked about earlier in this video. We're really trying to find an advantage. So something, we want to sell a product that is more valuable and it's actually better, but it's not just valuable because there's more stuff there or better stuff, because we can add things all day long and improve things all day long, but it probably will mean that our costs are going to go up and up. And at some point, people aren't going to be willing to pay for that, or not many people at least. So we want to try to find and come up with an improved version of the product that is still basically, more cost efficient. It costs us the same or maybe even less. And that's how we create true value for people with the product. Like we're actually coming out with something that's more valuable. That is the key here. So you might find things that should be removed. There might be things that everyone is talking about and offering, but no one talks about. So you might want to look at some of the positive reviews as well and see what's coming up. Like what are people talking about, and what doesn't ever get mentioned. You'll see products that have all kinds of features and things, and no one talks about it. No one cares, right? So you want to figure that out as well. And sometimes people are complaining about something that is there that you can just remove, right? You can just see, oh, we should just remove this thing. It doesn't do anything, and people complain about it. And sometimes having more stuff causes more issues because there's more things that can go wrong. So after you've identified things that you can improve and things that you can basically remove, so improve means, do it better or add something, do more of something, things like that. Remove means getting rid of things or reducing things. It might even be just like less emphasis on something. Now the second part of this is you want to figure out what level of product evolution it requires to make this happen. Because ultimately here we're going to figure out the impact on cost that these things have. So to explain the levels of product evolution to you, there's basically 3. The first one is just private label. And basically what's really important to understand here as well is that innovating and evolving a product doesn't have to be so difficult and costly,
the first stage of evolution, really, when you create a product, is just the private label part of it, right? So that doesn't necessarily even cost anything more. It doesn't even take longer to do or anything sometimes. It can be very simple things, right? So to evolve and create a product, you could just start with private label elements, such as the look and feel of the product, like the branding, the colors, some, materials, but also like packaging. That's a very simple thing to do to create some differentiation. It could be bundling, right? Adding things into it, so it's a package. There could be variations. So these are things I'm assuming almost all of you have heard about, right? Just the classic private label stuff. And sometimes you can actually create a good strategic advantage with those things. It's enough, but it has to be based on this stuff, right? It has to be based on real world feedback from people. So people that already bought and consumed the product, not just people that, think about the product. It's not going to be based on what we think about the product, because it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters are the problems that people are facing. What are people actually complaining about? The people that actually buy the product and use it. And that's what we want to figure out. And based on that, we can come out with private label improvements. Because we don't want to create like some really nice packaging for a product that no one even wants any packaging on it, or it doesn't even make sense, right? It has to be something where ideally people are complaining that the other products have annoying or poor packaging or things like that. So that's the first stage, and this is easy to do, and you should always do some of that right from day one, because it may give you some good differentiation. Sometimes it can give you a lot of differentiation if you create, let's say, a new bundle no one has created or something like this. The second level of product evolution is customization. So now we go a bit farther, and you're actually doing things like maybe using different materials to create the product. You might switch some of them up, and this can be still, pretty easy to do. You might change the size of the product. You might try to adjust the weight, dimensions, and even add features or remove features. So now we go a bit farther. And again, this is easier to do than most people realize. Sometimes it can be a simple thing the supplier can do without any problems, and it can create a massive differentiation for you and actually it actually creates a better product. It's incredible how little people actually think about these things, because most products are made by the factories and trade companies, and they're just sort of standardized products, but there's not a lot of evolution going on there. So it's your job as the brand owner, the seller, the IT person behind what you're doing to really work on this part of it and make it happen. And the manufacturers and trade companies can do it. That is no question. With these sort of customizations, if it actually is doable, like physically, and the product will work and things like that, they can do it. And then the third level, so usually you start with like a private label strategy, right? And then as you prove that and it's working based on feedback, you come out with some customizations, and eventually you might go all the way into innovations. And sometimes you want to start with an innovation, but then it might be a good idea to launch that innovation and test it first through a platform like Kickstarter to get the proof of concept and actually get the funds to make it happen, because the innovation part can be more expensive. So now you're basically talking about coming out with like a brand new concept or brand new functionality or a brand new product design. And obviously this may take more time, more money, and really, some R&D and things to make it actually happen. But if you come out with an innovation that works, that can make you millions and millions and millions of dollars, because that can just take off, and that is what can build a truly big, successful brand. A brand that has true, deep, real, tangible value, because you are an innovator. You're actually creating and maybe even patenting products and things that your brand owns, and this is how you really go big with a brand. And you go way beyond just private labeling and selling on Amazon, you're actually creating a brand. And even the customization can really accomplish some of this. So now that you know this, let me show you how to, finalize this step here with this framework. So you want to identify the level at which the improvement would happen, right? So quality of soldering, what level is that? I mean, that's actually the private label level, because that's just the same exact product, but just the quality of the craftsmanship, right? So that can be improved very easily just by talking to the factory about it and working on that piece of it. High lantern light shine, that could be one or two, right? It could be, just using better materials, or whatever it may be that gives it a high lantern light shine. But it could also be switching up the product itself a bit. But I would say this is most likely like a private label level, because you're not really adding a feature or anything like that. You're just improving the current product, right? If that's all you're doing. So here you want to really, again, map out all the improvements, and you're not committing to doing this at all right now. You're just mapping it out and the level at which it would happen. Now the next part of it is to actually estimate the cost of doing this. Sometimes it's gonna be pretty obvious how much it would cost. Sometimes you can just go and ask your supplier about the things you're mostly interested in. So you might write down a bunch of things here, but you might say, okay, out of these, really like the top 2 and 3 are within my grasp, like it's private label, let's say I want to start with that, or it doesn't go beyond level 2, which is customization. And I want to start with that, and they're also the main complaints, and this is a great improvement. So let's say we just focus on these two. Now estimate the cost, talk to the supplier about these two things, and realize that most things will take some additional cost to do, right? Some things not. Some things aren't going to cost anything, but something will cost a bit more. So let's just say, per unit, this one costs, like 10 cents more. It shouldn't cost a lot more. The other one might require better bolts or something. So let's say it's 0.50 per product, per unit. Now let's say we identified something to remove, and I'll just write an example because I don't know what that would be for this product. But let's say this would be also just like the private label level, really simple thing. Maybe there's something that comes with the product, or something that you find people never talk about, people don't seem to care about, so we can just remove it. Now you might save 0.50 on this. And what ends up happening is that you could make these adjustments to the product. It could be very simple, private label, it could be more advanced, 2 or 3 here. But in either case, you want to figure out what you could reasonably do, what you want to do, and then you want to look at the cost implications of doing this. And the ideal situation looks something like this. Basically, it would either cut the costs down, or they would stay about the same. And that is a fantastic scenario, because now you've just crafted a product that's better, but you can sell it for the same amount of money, or probably higher because it's actually better. But even if you did sell it at the same price that people are selling it for, you've got a true, genuine advantage with this product because it's actually better. And now you can talk about this in all your marketing and on the listings, but people also notice. It will start to come across in the reviews, and long term you can actually win because your reviews are going to be better, and it's going to really help you long term, build that listing up and maintain it in good standing and win in the long term and the short term as well. So sometimes, the cost will go down, which is another, that's sort of a type of evolution that can help you a lot, because it could just be a simpler version of the product, but now, you have lower costs. That's another advantage, right? It's one of the advantages. But sometimes the cost will go up. But if the benefits for the customer are high enough, it should pay off, right? So when you go into like customization and innovation, especially in the beginning, it may cost a bit more. and it could just be some upfront costs that then go away. But this can be worthwhile for sure. It's not all about, you know, having the cheapest cost, even though that is an advantage. It's also about having the best product. So that's really it for this product pain points framework, and I hope you find this enlightening and valuable, and you put this into action. If you have an existing product, I suggest you go through this exercise and see what happens, what you are actually able to see from doing this, because it's going to open your eyes. And if you're looking to do a new product, this is something you should absolutely apply from day one to a certain extent. It could again just be simple private label adjustments, again based on real feedback. That's the key, because then you're actually gonna do something that people care about and that is actually valuable. You know, you're not just adding some ebook or something that no one is ever gonna look at. Like, you're doing something of true value with your private labeling. I want to mention that this is just one of many frameworks I use to come up with a unique product strategy that gives me a strong competitive advantage. You know, I literally have a whole process for this that I teach my Apex students, and it contains more than 12 analytical frameworks to apply. And this really guarantees you have a strong competitive edge with your products. And it really makes a huge difference. You know, I cannot stress this enough, because this is the first and most fundamental step to setting yourself apart from the competition and avoiding saturation and, you know, competing head on with the same exact thing, because that is just a guaranteed way to have a lot of competition and struggle. And, you know, again, I want to also mention that if this seems out of reach or overwhelming to do, you know, don't worry, because you can start out with very simple things. And you know, like I mentioned with the different levels of product evolution, you know, that is really how you start out with the simpler things, the faster, the less expensive, less complicated things, and then you gradually evolve the product through customization and eventually actual innovation, potentially into like a true unicorn, unique product that has a massive strategic advantage, and that can make you a very wealthy person if you do that right. So obviously there's many other things too that give you a competitive advantage, and I mean things like your level of skill applying advertising, how good you are at managing your supply chain, how smooth of an operator you are, and so forth. So make sure you keep an eye out over the coming days and weeks, as I'll be sharing more of that with you as well. Now, if you like this video, make sure you like it and subscribe to my channel on YouTube, as I will release at least 2 to 3 new videos like this every month. And please let me know what you think in the comments below. I read every comment personally, and I'm happy to answer your questions. And as a reminder, the product pain points framework here is available for download on our website. You know, if you go to the blog post, you can click a link to go straight to this sheet here, and if you just go file, make a copy, you can make a copy on your drive, and you have a framework that you can work with and edit and use for yourself. So I hope this has been valuable, and thanks so much for watching this video, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye for now.